Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was blamed for a disaster? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The neon heartbeat of Shibuya never truly slowed, even in the encroaching twilight. The district was a kaleidoscope of electric blues, violent pinks, and the perpetual, shifting white of massive LED screens. For Izuku Midoriya, the sensory overload had become a background hum, a chaotic rhythm he had learned to tune out in favor of the sharper, more dangerous frequencies of hero work. It was late October. The air held a crisp bite that cut through the humidity of the crowded streets. Izuku stood atop the precipice of the Cerulean Tower, the wind whipping his dark green cowl against his cheeks. The metal soles of his iron-soled boots clicked softly against the concrete ledge as he shifted his weight. Stop vibrating, nerd. You're shaking the whole damn roof. Izuku didn't turn. He smiled beneath his mask, recognizing the gravelly, irritated cadence of Katsuki Bakugo. I'm not vibrating, Kakin. I'm warming up. It's chilly, you're muttering. I can hear you thinking from over here. It's annoying. Bakugo stepped up beside him, the orange X across his chest catching the reflection of a passing news blimp. He looked out over the sprawling metropolis, his eyes narrowed not in anger, but in the hypervigilant scan of a predator. Endeavor said the patrol routes are shifting east tonight. Too much chatter on the underground channels? The Paranormal Liberation Front remnants? Izuku asked, his voice losing its lightness. Scraps, Bakugo scoffed, though his grip on his grenadier gauntlets tightened. Cockroaches that didn't know when to die. But something feels off. It's too quiet for a Friday. Shoto Todoroki joined them, exhaling a small cloud of condensation. Vernon mentioned that the seismic sensors in the lower subway levels were tripping earlier. Maintenance crews said it was just old infrastructure settling, but you don't buy it, Izuku finished. He felt that familiar prickle at the base of his skull, the danger sense from the fourth user. It wasn't screaming yet, just a low, throbbing headache that warned of vague malice. I've had a bad feeling all day. One for all is restless. Below them, the scramble crossing was a sea of pedestrians. Thousands of lives moving in synchronized chaos. Hero society was still fragile, recovering from the war, held together by the frantic efforts of the remaining pro-heroes and the students thrust too early into the spotlight. Can it, you too? Endeavor's voice boomed through their earpieces. The number one hero was patrolling the street level, his presence a literal beacon of fire. Focus. We are the deterrent. If something happens, we react instantly. No hesitation. Midoriya, take the western quadrant near the heavy transit lines. Bakugo, Todoroki, stick to the commercial district. Roger, Izuku said, adjusting his gloves. Don't screw it up, Deku, Bakugo grunted, launching himself off the roof with a controlled explosion. If you fall behind, I'm leaving you in the dust. Be careful, Midoriya, Todoroki added with a nod before sliding down a massive ramp of ice. Izuku was left alone on the rooftop. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the cold city air. He channeled one for all, the lightning crackling green around his body. Full cowl, 45%. Let's go. He leaped. The first hour was routine. A purse snatcher stopped in an alleyway. A runaway truck halted before it could plow into a convenience store. Standard hero work. But the itch in Izuku's skull didn't fade. It grew sharper, like a needle pressing against his brain. He was perched on a traffic light pole near the Shibuya 109 building when the world tilted. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a vibration. A deep, guttural thrum that traveled up through the soles of his boots. Then came the roar. Boom! An explosion ripped through the pavement 3 blocks away. A plume of black smoke spiraled into the sky, blotting out the neon advertisements. Status! Endeavor's voice roared over the comms, cutting through the static. Explosion at Sector 4. Brennan yelled back. Gas main? No, villains! Multiple hostiles emerging from the subway access points. I'm engaging! Bakugo shouted. Die, you extras! Izuku launched himself toward the smoke, swinging from building corners using Black Whip. The air was suddenly thick with the smell of sulfur and burning rubber. People were screaming, the orderly flow of the crossing dissolving into a stampede of terror. Danger sense spiked hard. Stab. Izuku midair dodged, twisting his body violently to the left as a spike of concrete shot up from the building below him. He landed in a crouch on a balcony, scanning the area. Deku! It was Uraraka's voice on the private Class 1A channel. We're near the station. The evacuation shelter, the Grand Shibuya Underground. The entrance has been breached. I'm on my way. Izuku tapped his comms. Endeavor. I'm diverting to the evacuation shelter. Uraraka says it's compromised. Go! Endeavor commanded, the sound of roaring flames in the background. Secure the civilians. Do not let that structure fail. The Grand Shibuya Underground Shelter was a marvel of modern engineering, a massive subterranean bunker designed to hold 10,000 people during villain attacks or natural disasters. It was supposed to be impenetrable. As Izuku landed at the plaza entrance, he saw the problem. The massive blast doors had been warped, melted by some kind of acid quirk. Smoke billowed from the jagged opening. Inside, the emergency sirens were wailing, a dissonant screech against the panic of the crowd. Out of the way! Izuku shouted, using Black Whip to gently move debris aside, clearing a path for fleeing civilians. Move to the surface. Keep your heads down. He dove into the smoke. The interior of the shelter was a cavernous dome, supported by 6 massive ferroconcrete pillars. It was designed to look like a park, an attempt to keep civilians calm underground. Now, it looked like a war zone. Chunks of the ceiling were raining down. The lighting system was flickering, casting strobe-like shadows across the thousands of terrified faces huddled near the center. Uraraka! Ida! Izuku yelled. Here! Ida zoomed past, carrying 3 people on his back, his engines roaring. The structural integrity is failing, Midoriya. The pillars on the north side were detonated. Izuku looked up. The north side of the dome was sagging. The rebar was groaning, a sound like a dying beast. If that section fell, it would crush hundreds. I've got it! Izuku screamed. He channeled one for all to 50%, ignoring the strain. 6 tendrils of Black Whip exploded from his back, shooting upward. They latched onto the crumbling ceiling, sinking deep into the concrete. HNNNGH. Izuku gritted his teeth, his boots cracking the floor beneath him as he took the weight of thousands of tons of rock. He was a living pillar. Ida? Get them out! I'll hold it. You can't hold that forever! Ida yelled, speeding off to ferry more people. I just have to hold it. Long enough. Sweat poured down Izuku's forehead. His muscles screamed. The weight was immense, pressing him down, compressing his spine. But he looked at the families huddled beneath the shadow of the falling rock, mothers shielding children, elderly clutching each other. He smiled, a strange, shaky grimace. It's okay! He shouted, his voice echoing through the dusty chamber. I am here! For a moment, it seemed like it would work. The shaking stopped. The civilians began to move faster, encouraged by the hero holding up the sky. Then, danger sense didn't just spike. It screamed. Izuku's eyes widened. He sensed malice. Pure, unadulterated malice. Not from the entrance, but from behind him. You really do have a savior complex, don't you? The voice was soft, mocking. It sounded exactly like his own. Izuku tried to turn his head, but the weight of the ceiling kept him pinned. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement in the shadows of a broken pillar. A figure stepped out. Izuku's breath hitched. The figure was wearing a dark green costume. It had iron-soled boots. It had messy green hair. It was him. Who? Izuku grunted, the strain in his arms increasing. The doppelganger smiled, a twisted, predatory expression that didn't belong on Izuku Midoriya's face. The name is mimicry. But for tonight, I'm just Deku. The villain raised a hand. Black tendrils erupted from his arm. Izuku's eyes widened in horror. He has Black Whip? Is this Monoma? No. Monoma needs to touch me. This guy, his presence feels slimy. What are you doing? Izuku yelled. Giving the public a show, Mimicry whispered. He flicked his wrist. The Black Whip tendrils from the villain didn't grab the ceiling to support it. They lashed out like blades. Slash. They cut through the 2 remaining support pillars closest to Izuku. No! Izuku screamed. The weight on his own black whip doubled instantly. His knees buckled, smashing into the floor. Blood sprayed from his nose from the internal pressure. Why? Izuku roared. There are people here. Exactly, Mimicry laughed. He raised a hand toward the ceiling, right where Izuku's tendrils were anchored. And look! Up there! Izuku looked. Hovering in the gloom of the ceiling cracks were 3 small, insect-like drones. The red recording lights were blinking. They were HPSC news drones, likely hacked or deployed to capture the rescue. Mimicry stepped into the light, right next to where Izuku was kneeling. To the drones, and to the people running away who glanced back, it didn't look like 2 people. The dust and shadows obscured the duality. It looked like one hero, Deku, standing amidst the chaos. Mimicry raised his voice, mimicking Izuku's tone perfectly, but twisting the words. These people, they don't deserve saving. This society is rotten. Let it all come down. Stop it! Izuku shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the groan of the metal. Mimicry lashed out again with his black tendrils, this time slicing through Izuku's black whip lines. The connection snapped. For a split second, there was silence. A vacuum of sound. Then, gravity reclaimed its due. Run! Izuku screamed, lunging forward not to fight the villain, but to try and catch the falling slab with his bare hands. He caught it. The impact felt like a semi-truck hitting him from above. His radius and ulna in his left arm fractured with a sickening crack. He fell to one knee, holding up a slab the size of a basketball court. Mimicry stood casually just outside the crush zone. He looked at the drones, then at the struggling, bleeding Izuku. Oops, the villain whispered. Mimicry dissolved into a gray sludge, slipping into a floor grate and vanishing just as the secondary supports gave way completely. The ceiling came down. Darkness, pain, heat. Izuku floated in a void of agony. His body felt broken. He could hear the vestiges shouting in the back of his mind. Nana Shimura's voice panicked, the first voice commanding him to wake up. He gasped, inhaling a lungful of concrete dust. He coughed, the spasm sending bolts of lightning through his chest. He was buried, one for all. Full cow, he rasped. Green lightning flickered weakly around him. He pushed. A slab of concrete shifted. A sliver of light pierced the darkness. He pushed harder, screaming through the pain of his broken arm. With a massive heave, he threw the debris aside and pulled himself out of the hole. The scene that greeted him was a nightmare. The shelter was gone. The dome had collapsed in the center. The air was thick with gray dust that coated everything like snow. Hello? Izuku called out, his voice hoarse. Is anyone? Uraraka? Ida? Silence. Then, the sound of weeping. He stumbled forward, limping heavily. His costume was shredded. His mask was gone. Blood matted his hair and ran down into his eyes. He saw a hand sticking out of the rubble. He rushed to it, digging frantically with his good hand. I've got you. It's okay. It's okay. He pulled the man free. The man was coughing, covered in blood. He looked up at Izuku. Izuku expected relief. He expected a thank you. Instead, the man's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated terror. He scrambled backward, dragging his injured leg. Get away! Get away from me! Izuku froze, his hand outstretched. Sir? It's me. Deku. I'm a hero. I saw you! The man screamed, pointing a shaking finger. I saw you cut the pillars! You monster! Izuku blinked, the words not registering. What? No, that was a villain. He looked like me, but, liar! A woman's voice. Izuku spun around. A group of survivors had gathered near the exit tunnel. They were holding up phones, recording him. Their faces were masks of hatred and fear. We saw the news. It's live. They showed you saying it. Saying what? Izuku took a step forward, and the crowd flinched back as if he were a bomb. I didn't say anything. I was holding the ceiling. Buzz. 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 The sound of rotors. Izuku looked up through the gaping hole in the shelter roof. Searchlights blinded him. Dozens of drones. And behind them, Hero Agency helicopters. Izuku Midoriya, The voice was amplified, booming from above. It wasn't All Might. It wasn't Endeavor. It was the cold, mechanical voice of a Public Safety Commission tactical squad leader. Cease all quirk usage immediately. Drop to your knees and place your hands behind your head. Wait! Izuku yelled at the sky, shielding his eyes. There are still people trapped. We need to dig them out. The villain, Mimicry, he went into the sewers. We have to catch him. Repeat, cease quirk usage. You are considered an S-rank threat. From the perimeter of the crater, figures emerged. Izuku's heart shattered. It wasn't the police. It was the heroes. Kamui Woods. Empty Lady. A squad of sidekicks holding heavy suppression rifles. And leading them, looking more tired and disheveled than Izuku had ever seen him. Eraserhead. Aizawa stood at the edge of the ruin, his capture scarf floating around him, his hair raised. His eyes were glowing red. He was erasing Izuku's quirk. Sensei? Izuku whispered, the lightning around him dying out. The pain of his broken bones rushed back in full force without the quirk's support, and he collapsed to his knees. Aizawa leaped down, landing silently in front of Izuku. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't ask if he was okay. He kept his eyes locked on Izuku's, his expression unreadable, a wall of stone. Aizawa-sensei, Izuku pleaded, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. I didn't do it. There was someone else. He had Black Whip. He looked like me. Aizawa's eye twitched. We saw the footage, Midoriya. High definition. Biometrics matched. Voice print matched. It was a fake. A quirk. Enough, Aizawa said, his voice low, laced with a pain he tried to hide. Don't make this harder. If you resist, they have orders to use lethal force. Look around you. Izuku looked. On the rim of the crater, snipers were positioned. Endeavor had landed, his flames burning low, his face a mask of shock and confusion. Beside him, Bakugo was being physically restrained by Best Jeanist. Let me go! Bakugo was screaming, his explosions muffled by Jeanist's fibers. He didn't do it, you damn idiots! Deku wouldn't kill a fly. Let me go! Seeing Bakugo fight for him broke something inside Izuku. It made the reality real. They really thought he did this. Hands, Midoriya, Aizawa commanded, pulling out a pair of heavy, quirk-suppressing cuffs. Izuku looked at his teacher. He looked at the bodies being pulled from the rubble by rescue crews who glared at him with disgust. He looked at the drones broadcasting his face to the entire world. He felt a cold, sinking sensation in his gut. The HPSC? They were moving too fast. They were here too quickly with the heavy artillery. The evidence was accepted too easily. They want this, the second user's voice echoed in his head. They want a scapegoat. They want you under control. I didn't do it, Izuku whispered, his voice trembling. Tell it to the detective, Aizawa said, snapping the cuffs onto Izuku's wrists. The cold metal bit into his skin. Izuku Midoriya, you are under arrest for mass manslaughter, terrorism, and treason against the state. As Aizawa hauled him to his feet, Izuku stumbled. He looked up at the giant screens on the buildings surrounding the crater. The news was playing a loop. It was the footage from the drones inside the shelter. On the screen, Deku stood amidst the rubble, eyes glowing green, laughing maniacally as he sliced the pillars. The audio was crisp. These people, they don't deserve saving. It looked perfect. It was undeniable. Izuku stared at his own face on the screen, a stranger wearing his skin. The crowd gathered at the police barricades began to chant. It wasn't a cheer. It was a low, angry rumble that grew into a roar. Traitor! Villain! Murderer! A bottle was thrown. It struck Izuku on the shoulder. He didn't flinch. He just stared at the ground, his world narrowing to the dusty boots of his teacher. Move, Aizawa said, pushing him toward the armored transport vehicle. As the heavy steel doors slammed shut, cutting off the light of Shibuya and the jeers of the crowd, Izuku was plunged into darkness. Alone. Police headquarters. Interrogation room 4. 2 hours later. The room was cold. Sterile. A single two-way mirror dominated one wall. Izuku sat handcuffed to a metal table. His arm had been rudely splinted by a field medic, but not healed. The pain was a dull throb that kept him lucid. He waited for Detective Tsukachi, the true man. Tsukachi's quirk, lie detector, would clear this up in seconds. Izuku just had to say, "I didn't do it," and the bell would ring true, and this nightmare would end. The door buzzed and opened. It wasn't Tsukachi. Two men in sharp gray suits walked in. They didn't look like police. They looked like bureaucrats. Cold, efficient, sharks in human skin. They wore the lapel pins of the Hero Public Safety Commission. "Where is Detective Tsukachi?" Izuku asked, his voice dry. "The detective is unavailable." "Conflict of interest," the taller man said, sitting opposite Izuku. He placed the tablet on the table. "I am Agent Mera. This is Agent Sato. We are handling the inquiry. I want Tsukachi. Or All Might. Or a lawyer." "You are being held under the Special Measures Act regarding quirk terrorism," Mera said, his voice bored, tired. "Rights to counsel are suspended for 48 hours. We are here to process your confession." "I won't confess to something I didn't do," Izuku said firmly, staring him down. "It was a villain named Mimicry. He has a transformation quirk. Check the rubble for sludge residue. Check the comms logs. I was calling for help." Mera tapped the tablet. A holographic video played. It was the confession from the shelter again. "We have the logs," Mera said. "We have audio of you muttering about how heavy the burden is. About how society is ungrateful. We have psychological profiles suggesting the pressure of being All Might's successor caused a psychotic break." "That's a lie. You're taking things out of context." Mera leaned forward, his eyes dead. "Midoriya. Look at the numbers. 142 confirmed dead. 300 critical. The shelter collapsed because the supports were cut. The supports were cut by Black Whip. Only one person has Black Whip. The villain copied it, a quirk that copies multiple quirks perfectly? Including the visual manifestation? Unheard of." Mera dismissed it. "Even Monoma of Class 1B cannot replicate power output to that scale immediately. The energy signature matches you, Midoriya. Not a copy." "You." Izuku went cold. "The energy signature matches? How?" Unless All for One is involved. Unless they have data on me so precise they can fake the signature." "Why are you doing this?" Izuku whispered. "You know I'm a hero." Mera stood up, collecting the tablet. He walked to the door, then paused. He looked back at Izuku, and for a second, there was no malice, just a chilling pragmatism. "The world is terrified, Midoriya. The villains are winning the narrative. People have lost faith in heroes. They think heroes are weak. So you frame me?" "No," Mera said softly. "We show them that the system works. We show them that even the strongest hero is not above the law. If we catch a rogue hero and punish him swiftly, it restores faith in the institution. It shows the Commission is in control." "You're using me as a sacrifice," Izuku realized, horror dawning on him. "To save face." "We are saving society," Mera corrected. "One for All is too dangerous to be left in the hands of an unstable child. We will be transferring you to a secure facility for extraction and containment." "Tartarus?" Mera smirked. "Tartarus was destroyed, remember?" "No. Somewhere deeper. Somewhere no one will hear you scream about your innocence." The door slammed shut. Izuku sat in the silence. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He looked at his hands, scarred, broken, cuffed. Hands that had saved Eri. Hands that had fought Muscular. Hands that tried to hold up the sky. They weren't looking for the truth. They had written the script, and he was the villain of the final act. If he stayed here, he would disappear. One for All would be locked away or stolen. The real villains would win. Izuku closed his eyes. He took a breath. He reached deep inside, past the pain, past the fear, to the embers of One for All. Danger sense was silent now. The immediate threat wasn't physical, it was systemic. But inside the vestige world, the first user spoke clearly. "Run, Ninth." Izuku opened his eyes. The green irises glowed with a dangerous intensity. He wasn't going to wait for a lawyer. He wasn't going to wait for All Might. If the world wanted a villain, he wouldn't give them one. But if they wanted a fight? He looked at the quirk-suppressing cuffs. They were strong. But they were designed for normal quirks. They were designed for 100% of a human's output. They weren't designed for the accumulated power of 8 generations. Izuku flexed his wrists. The metal groaned. I am here, he whispered to the empty room. And I'm not done yet. The concept of time had dissolved. In the bowels of the central precinct holding facility, there was no day or night, only the sterile, unwavering hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic throb of the quirk-suppressing cuffs biting into Izuku Midoriya's wrists. His left arm, fractured during the collapse, had been set in a rudimentary cast, but the healing quirks were withheld. Standard procedure for high-risk detainees, the guard had sneered through the slot in the heavy steel door. Pain was a form of control. Izuku sat on the edge of the metal cot, staring at the floor. The concrete was gray, featureless, much like the future that was rapidly closing in on him. Inside his mind, the vestiges were in an uproar. This is a farce, the second user's voice was sharp, echoing against the walls of Izuku's skull. They aren't looking for answers. They're looking for a burial site. Calm down, the first user urged, though his voice wavered with anxiety. We must trust in the connections Ninth has made. All might will come. The truth will out. Will it? Nana Shimura's voice was heavy with grief. Look at how quickly they turned. The fear is palpable, Izuku. I can feel it through you. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't want to feel the fear. He didn't want to remember the look on the civilian's face. The man he had dug out of the rubble, the man who had looked at him not as a savior, but as a monster. I saw you cut the pillars. The lie was so audacious, so complete, that it felt heavier than the ceiling he had tried to hold. The heavy lock of the cell door clanked. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. Izuku looked up, expecting Aizawa, or Tsukachi, or even All Might bursting in with a smile that said, "It's all right now." Instead, it was Agent Mera from the HPSC, accompanied by 2 armed guards in full riot gear. Mera looked exhausted, his eyes bags heavy, but his posture was rigid with bureaucratic authority. Stand up, prisoner 4902, Mera commanded. Izuku stood, his legs trembling slightly from exhaustion. Have you found the footage? The real footage? Mera didn't answer. He signaled the guards. Movement to interrogation room B. Hands where we can see them. As they marched him down the hallway, Izuku caught a glimpse of a television screen mounted in the guard station. It was muted, but the cheer and screaming across the bottom was impossible to miss. DKU, fallen hero or hidden villain? Death toll rises to 165. Poll, 82% of citizens feel unsafe. All Might remain silent. The hallway seemed to stretch, twisting into a tunnel of judgment. UA High School, Heights Alliance dorms. The same time. The common room of the Class 1A dorms was usually a place of laughter, of cooking smells, of homework scattered on tables. Tonight, it was a funeral parlor. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, mirroring the storm inside. The television was on, broadcasting the endless loop of the Shibuya incident. Every channel. Every station. Ochako Uraraka sat on the sofa, her knees pulled to her chest, staring blankly at the screen. Her eyes were red and puffy. It's not him, she whispered, for the 100th time. It's not him. He wouldn't. We know, Ribbit, Tsuyu Azui said, sitting beside her, her hand resting gently on Ochako's shoulder. But Tsuyu's voice trembled. Tenya Ida was pacing the length of the room, his movements stiff, robotic. The logic doesn't hold, he muttered, chopping the air with his hand. Midoriya's quirk, Black Whip, it is a capture tool. To use it as a cutting instrument requires a specific intent and modification of the quirk's tensile strength that he has never demonstrated in training. Furthermore, the motive is non-existent. Tell that to the cops, Eijiro Kurishima said, his voice thick with frustration. He was sitting on the floor, crushing a soda can in his hardened hand until it was a twisted puck of aluminum. They raided his room an hour ago, man. They took his notebooks. They took his laptop. They treated his All Might posters like terrorist propaganda. They were looking for a manifesto, Shoto Todoroki said quietly from the corner. He was leaning against the wall, his dual-colored eyes cold. They want to paint a picture of a fanatic. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the kitchen. Katsuki Bakugo kicked a chair, sending it skidding across the room where it smashed into the wall. He stood there, panting, his shoulders heaving. He wasn't crying. He was vibrating with a rage so pure it felt like the air around him was igniting. Shut up! Bakugo roared at the TV, at the room, at the world. Turn that damn thing off. Bakugo, please, Momo Yaoyorozu said softly, holding a remote. We need to know what they're saying. They're lying. Bakugo stomped toward the TV, sparks popping from his palms. That damn nerd is too self-righteous to jaywalk. You think he killed 100 people? You think he did that? No one here thinks that, Bakugo. Ida shouted back, stopping his pacing. We are on his side. Then why are we sitting here? Bakugo screamed, grabbing Ida by the collar of his shirt. Why aren't we breaking down the doors of the precinct? Why is Aizawa still gone? Why is All Might not on that screen telling everyone to go to hell? Because if we move, they brand us as accomplices, Todoroki said, stepping between them and prying Bakugo's hand off Ida. Use your head, Bakugo. The HPSC is looking for a reason to purge UA. If we act like vigilantes now, we prove their point that hero students are out of control. Bakugo shoved Todoroki away, sneering. So we just watch? We watch them bury him. We wait for Aizawa-sensei, Todoroki said firmly. We wait for orders. Bakugo spat on the floor. Screw orders. He stormed toward the elevator. I'm going to my room. If anyone comes near me, I'll blast them. The elevator doors closed, leaving the rest of the class in a silence that was heavier than the storm outside. Mina Ashido hugged a cushion, her voice small. Does anyone else feel like the world just ended? Police headquarters, interrogation room B. The room was different this time. Darker. The two-way mirror was gone, replaced by a wall of screens. Izuku was shoved into the metal chair. Agent Mera sat opposite him again. This time, there was no tablet. Just a remote control. We have processed the evidence from your dormitory, Mera began, his voice devoid of emotion. The notebooks. Hero analysis for the future. Volumes 1 through 13. Those are just notes, Izuku said, his throat dry. Strategies. Observations. Or target lists, Mera countered. He clicked the remote. The wall of screens flared to life. It was a montage. A erratic, jagged edit of news footage, security cam feeds, and audio recordings. Screen 1, the sports festival. Deku breaking his fingers, screaming with a manic look in his eyes. Screen 2, the fight with Muscular. Deku roaring, blood coating his face. Screen 3, the vigilante arc dark Deku covered in mud and filth, looking more like a demon than a hero, terrifying civilians. We have built a profile, Midoriya, Mera said, standing up and walking around the table. A boy born quirkless. Desperate for power. Given a power too great for his body. The trauma accumulation. The broken bones. The isolation. You're twisting it, Izuku whispered. Are we? Mera clicked the remote again. The screen changed. It was the footage from the shelter. High definition. Enhanced audio. On screen, Deku stands over the broken pillars. The camera zooms in on his face. The expression is one of twisted euphoria. The lip sync is perfect. The shadows fall across the freckles perfectly. These people, they don't deserve saving. This society is rotten. Let it all come down. Mera paused the video on that face. Our technicians have run this through every detection algorithm we have, Mera said softly. It's not a deep fake, Midoriya. The pixel density is consistent. The light refraction is consistent. The biometrics, heart rate, pupil dilation, microexpressions, they match your baseline perfectly. Izuku stared at the screen. He felt sick. It was him. It was undeniably him. Even he started to doubt his own memory for a fraction of a second. Did I snap? Did the stress finally break me? No! The fourth user screamed in his mind. It's an imposter. A shifter. Don't let them gaslight you. It's a quirk, Izuku insisted, gripping the edge of the table until the metal groaned. The villain mimicry. I felt him. Danger sense triggered right before he appeared behind me. We found no trace of another villain, Mera said. We found sludge residue, yes. But the lab results indicate it was sewage from a ruptured pipe. Not a villain. That's convenient, isn't it? Izuku looked up, anger finally burning through the despair. The evidence that clears me is just sewage. The evidence that damns me is flawless. Who is editing this, Mera? Who is writing this story? Mera's eyes narrowed. Careful, boy. You are speaking to a federal agent. I'm speaking to a coward, Izuku snapped. You're scared. The HPSC is scared because the heroes are failing. You need a scapegoat to show the public you're still in control. Look, we caught the bad apple. The rest of the basket is fine. Mera leaned down, his face inches from Izuku's. The public is demanding blood, Midoriya. They are storming the agency offices. They are burning All Might merchandise in the streets. If we do not give them a villain, they will tear the entire hero society apart. You wanted to save the world? Here is your chance. Be the villain they need to hate, so they can trust us again. Izuku recoiled. You want me to confess, to save the HPSC? I want you to confess to save your friends, Mera whispered. Because if you don't, the investigation expands. We look into UA. We look into your teachers. We look into your mother. Izuku lunged. He didn't mean to. It was instinct. A primal need to protect Inko. He surged forward, the chair screeching against the floor. Zatsop. The guard in the corner triggered the remote shock on the cuffs. Izuku convulsed, 50,000 volts pouring through his body. He slammed onto the table, his muscles locking up, smoke rising from his wrists. He gasped, drool dripping from his mouth, his vision going white. Sit him up, Mera said calmly, adjusting his tie. Let him think about it. The prosecution will seek the death penalty, Midoriya. But a guilty plea? That gets you life in a secure psychiatric facility. Think about your mother. Think about Yue. Mera walked out, leaving Izuku twitching in the chair, the smell of ozone and burnt skin filling the air. Yue High School, the principal's office. The atmosphere in Principal Nise's office was toxic. The usual scent of high-quality tea was masked by the smell of cold sweat and tension. Nise sat behind his desk, his paws clasped together. Opposite him sat the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission, a woman with eyes like flint and a soul made of spreadsheets. Standing by the window, looking out at the rain, was All Might. In his skeletal form, he looked more fragile than ever, his oversized suit hanging off his bony frame. But the shadows cast by his sunken eyes were dark and dangerous. Aizawa stood by the door, bandages still wrapped around his leg from the war, his capture scarf loose around his neck. This is madness, All Might rasped. Young Midoriya is innocent. I would stake my life on it. I am staking my life on it. Your life does not carry the currency it once did, Tashinori, the president said without looking at him. She kept her gaze on Nise. The commission has made its position clear. The evidence is irrefutable. Evidence can be manufactured, Nise said, his voice cheerful but laced with a terrifying edge. Especially when the narrative is convenient. A shape-shifting quirk is rare, but not impossible. Toga Himiko has demonstrated similar abilities. Why is the investigation so narrow? Because we don't have time for a manhunt. The president slammed her hand on the desk. The approval ratings for heroes have dropped 40% in 12 hours. The stock market is crashing. The Diet is calling for emergency measures. We need closure. Closure at the expense of justice is tyranny, Aizawa said, his voice low. If you condemn a student, my student, without a proper trial, Yue will not stand for it. The president turned slowly to Aizawa. Is that a threat, Eraserhead? It's a fact, Aizawa said. Class 1A knows him. They won't accept this. You'll have a mutiny on your hands. Then we will shut Yue down, the president said coldly. Silence sucked the air out of the room. Excuse me? Nise's ears twitched. You heard me, she continued, standing up. Yue has been a breeding ground for trouble for 2 years. Villain attacks. Kidnappings. The war. And now, the greatest villain since All for One emerges from your flagship class. The public considers this school a liability. If you obstruct the transfer of Izuku Midoriya to the max security wing, or if you incite your students to rebel, I will revoke Yue's hero license. I will bulldoze this campus. All Might step forward, blood coughing from his mouth. You wouldn't dare. The people love Yue. The people are terrified, she shouted back, losing her composure for the first time. They don't want plus ultra anymore, All Might. They want safety. And if sacrificing one boy gives them that, so be it. She straightened her jacket. Midoriya pleads guilty tomorrow. Or UA closes. Choose. She walked out, the heavy oak doors closing with a finality that shook the room. All Might sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I failed him. Again. No, Nisa said, his black eyes glinting in the dim light. He began to type furiously on his computer. She made a mistake. Aizawa looked up. What? She showed her hand. Nisa grinned, though it was a feral thing. They are rushing. They are desperate. Which means the evidence is fake, and they know it won't hold up to long-term scrutiny. They need him to confess to seal the cracks. So what do we do? All Might asked. We buy time, Nisa said. And we prepare for the worst. Aizawa, go back to the dorms. Keep the students there. If they run, they play into her hands. We need to fight this legally, publicly and, perhaps, covertly. Central Detention Center. Holding cell 4902, 3 a.m. Izuku hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the pillars falling. He was hungry. He was thirsty. His arm throbbed with a sick, hot rhythm. The door buzzed again. Lawyer, the guard grunted. Izuku blinked. I wasn't allowed a lawyer. Someone pulled strings. You got 10 minutes. Make it count. A man stepped into the cell. He was sleek. That was the only word for him. He wore a suit that cost more than Inko's apartment, midnight blue and perfectly tailored. His hair was silver, slicked back, and he wore rimless glasses that reflected the harsh cell light. He carried a leather briefcase. He didn't look like a public defender. He looked like a shark that ate other sharks. Mr. Midoriya, the man said, his voice smooth like oiled glass. My name is Goro Shizuka. I have been retained by an anonymous benefactor to represent you. Anonymous? Izuku asked, wary. Was it All Might? Shizuka smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say, there are parties interested in the preservation of your particular assets. He sat on the single metal stool, placing the briefcase on his knees. I'll be blunt, Izuku. Can I call you Izuku? You are screwed. Izuku stared at him. I'm innocent. Innocence is a story, Shizuka said, waving a hand dismissively. And right now, your story is a tragedy. The HPSC has the footage. They have the public. They have the judges in their pocket. If you go to trial, you will be found guilty. The sentence for mass manslaughter with a quirk is death. Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. However, Shizuka clicked the briefcase open. He pulled out a document. There is option B. He slid the paper across the cot. Plead guilty. Claim insanity. Claim the pressure of the war broke your mind. My clients have arranged for a specialized plea deal. You avoid execution. You avoid Tartarus. Well, what's left of it? Where would I go? Izuku asked, looking at the document. The legal jargon was dense, confusing. A private medical facility, Shizuka said. Top of the line. Peaceful. You would be treated. Studied. Kept safe from the public that wants to lynch you. Izuku looked at the name of the facility on the paper. The Darwin Research Institute. He didn't recognize it. But inside One for All, something stirred. The doctor, the first user, whispered. The smell, it's faint, but it's there. This man, the fifth user, growled. He's not a lawyer. Look at his hands. No callus from a pen. Those are hands that hold nothing but power. Izuku looked up at Shizuka. He focused on the man's eyes. Behind the glasses, there was a glint of something predatory. Who hired you? Izuku asked, his voice hardening. Does it matter? Shizuka leaned in. The HPSC wants you dead or locked in a hole. My client is offering you a life. A quiet life. All you have to do is sign, give up the hero act, and come with us. And One for All? Izuku asked quietly. The air in the room froze. Shizuka's smile didn't falter, but the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Quirk counseling is part of the therapy. If the quirk is the source of your stress, perhaps it can be relieved. The realization hit Izuku like a physical blow. This wasn't a lawyer. This was an extraction team. All for one couldn't take one for all by force because of the user's will. But if Izuku gave up? If he broke mentally? If he signed himself over to a facility run by Garaki's remnants? They were trying to break his will so they could harvest him. The HPSC was the hammer. This man was the anvil. Get out, Izuku said. Shizuka sighed, disappointed. Izuku. Be reasonable. Outside these walls, there is a mob waiting for you. Inside here, the government is planning your execution. We are the only lifeboat. I said get out. Izuku stood up, the green lightning flickering faintly around his skin despite the cuffs. The suppressors whined, overheating. Shizuka stood up slowly. He adjusted his glasses. Pity. The deal remains on the table until the transport leaves tomorrow morning. Think about it. Die a villain, or live, as something else. He tapped the door. Guard. As the door opened, Shizuka glanced back. Oh, and Izuku? I wouldn't count on All Might. A falling titan casts a long shadow, but he can't stop the sunset. The door clanged shut. The decision. Izuku was alone again. He paced the small cell. 3 steps forward. Turn. 3 steps back. Turn. The trap was perfect. If he stayed, the HPSC would convict him. He would rot in a cell, or be executed. The world would lose the symbol of peace. If he took the deal, he would be handed over to All for One. Game over. There was no legal way out. The system he had worshipped, the society he had broken his bones to protect, had closed its ranks against him. He stopped pacing. He looked at the high, barred window. Through the thick glass, he could see the faintest glow of the city lights. He thought about Class 1A. He thought about Ochako's smile. He thought about Bakugo's drive. He thought about All Might's trust. I didn't do it. I'll prove it. He couldn't prove it from inside a cage. He looked at his wrists. The cuffs were heavy duty. But they were electronic. He remembered the jolt of electricity earlier. The guard had a remote. The frequency. Izuku sat on the cot. He closed his eyes. He wasn't meditating. He was strategizing. Second user, Izuku thought. How much power can I force through before the suppressors knock me unconscious? Enough to break the lock, the second replied, his voice grim but approving. But the backlash will fry your nervous system. You won't be able to walk for 10 minutes. I don't need to walk, Izuku thought. I need to wait for the transport. Mera had said he was being moved to a secure facility tomorrow. That transport was his only window. Between the prison and the destination, there would be a moment. A variable. He wouldn't accept the lawyer's deal. He wouldn't accept the HPSC's judgment. Izuku Midoriya reached into his pocket. He hadn't been searched thoroughly enough, or perhaps they didn't care about a piece of scrap paper. It was a receipt from the convenience store, hours before the disaster. He didn't have a pen. He bit his lip. Hard. Until the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. Using the blood on his finger, he wrote on the back of the receipt. It was messy, jagged, and small. Not you. Not them. Find the truth. He folded the paper until it was the size of a pill. He would survive the night. He would face the morning. And when the cage opened, even for a second, the Deku who followed the rules would vanish. The public enemy would rise. The world was a vibration. Izuku Midoriya couldn't see. A heavy, sensory deprivation hood had been locked over his head, smelling of antiseptic and stale fear. He couldn't hear much beyond the low-frequency rumble of the engine and the blood rushing in his own ears. He was strapped into what the guards had called the sarcophagus, a vertical containment unit bolted to the floor of an armored transport. His arms were crossed over his chest, encased in heavy metal gauntlets that not only suppressed his quirk but physically locked his fingers together to prevent any somatic activation. His legs were shackled to the floor. He was a statue of a prisoner. A monument to the Public Safety Commission's fear. We are moving east, the third user, F.A. Jean, whispered in the back of Izuku's mind. Based on the turns and the deceleration patterns, we've left the urban center. We're on the coastal highway. They're taking you to the black site, the second user added, his voice grim. The one off the grid. If you arrive there, ninth, you don't come back. The extraction team from the lawyer will be waiting. Izuku tried to take a deep breath, but the chest restraints made it difficult. His broken arm, merely splinted and not healed, was a screaming nexus of pain that radiated up his neck. He focused on the rhythm of the road. Thrum. Thrum. Bump. He thought about the piece of paper hidden in his boot. The receipt with the bloody message. It felt like it was burning a hole against his ankle. It was his only tether to the truth. Status report. A voice crackled over the intercom inside the truck. It was Agent Mera. Convoy is green, a driver responded. Rain is heavy. Visibility is dropping. ETA to the drop-off point is 40 minutes. Keep it tight, Mera ordered. We have reports of civilian unrest at the tunnel entrance. Divert to the lower access road. I want this package delivered before the media wakes up. Package. That's what he was now. Not a student. Not a hero. Just hazardous material to be disposed of. Izuku closed his eyes behind the hood. He pictured the faces of Class 1A. He pictured All Might. He held on to those images like a lifeline, because the darkness of the hood was trying to swallow him whole. Don't give up, kid, Daigoro Banjo's voice boomed, trying to sound cheerful but failing. We've been in tighter spots, have we? Izuku thought back bleakly. Usually, when we're in tight spots, the cops are on our side. Suddenly, the truck lurched. The brakes screeched, a horrible, metal-on-metal tearing sound. Izuku was thrown forward against his restraints, the breath knocked out of him. Contact! Contact front! The driver screamed. Boom! An explosion rocked the vehicle. The heavy armor plating rang like a bell. The truck tipped, gravity shifting violently. Izuku felt weightless for a terrifying second, and then, crash! The transport slammed onto its side. Izuku hung suspended in his restraints, the blood rushing to his head. The sound of sliding metal was deafening as the truck skidded along the asphalt. Then silence. Only the sound of rain hammering against the hull. Security team! Sound off! Mera's voice was shaky, coming from somewhere in the front cabin. Ambush! A guard yelled from outside. It's not the League. It's ARGH. The scream was cut short by a wet, visceral sound. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. Who is it? The League of Villains coming to finish the job? Or the lawyer's extraction team early? Danger sense finally pierced through the drug haze and the suppressors. It wasn't the sharp stab of malice he usually felt. It was cold. Sharp. Focused. It felt like a blade. Outside, gunfire erupted. Short, controlled bursts from the HPSC guards' suppression rifles. But they were silenced one by one. The sounds of combat were brutal, the clang of metal, the thud of bodies hitting wet pavement. Then, the rear doors of the transport groaned. Screech. Something was cutting through the locking mechanism. Metal was being sheared away. With a final clunk, the doors were ripped open. The sound of the rain became louder, a roar of water. Secure the package! Mera yelled. Don't let him get it! Too late, a raspy voice growled. The hood was ripped off Izuku's head. Izuku blinked, his eyes adjusting to the gray, rainy light. The truck was lying on its side in the middle of a bridge. Burning wreckage of the escort motorcycles littered the road. Standing in the opening of the truck, framed by the storm, was a nightmare. He wore a tattered red scarf that whipped in the wind. His body was covered in blades. His eyes were wide, manic, and bloodshot. The hero killer, Stain, Izuku gasped. Stain crouched, hopping into the sideways truck. He landed silently despite his heavy boots. He looked at Izuku, trussed up in the sarcophagus, broken and battered, and his eyes narrowed in disgust. Not at Izuku, but at the chains. Look at you, Stain hissed, stepping over the unconscious body of a guard. The only true brightness in this rotting garbage heap, and they caged you like a dog. Why? Izuku rasped, his throat raw. Why are you here? Because false heroes create false villains, Stain said, drawing a long, jagged katana from his back. I watched the news. I saw the footage. The masses, they are sheep. They see what they are told to see, but I know a true conviction when I see one. You didn't cut those pillars. Stain stepped closer, the blade gleaming. A man who sacrifices his own bones to save filth does not kill for sport. Step away from him. Agent Mera had crawled into the back of the truck, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He raised a handgun, not a stun gun, a lethal firearm. His hands were shaking. Stain didn't even look at him. You intend to shoot me, bureaucrat? Or will you shoot the boy to keep your lie intact? Mera hesitated. His eyes darted between Stain and Izuku. I have orders. He is a threat to national security. He is the only security you have left, Stain spat. Stain moved. He was a blur of red and steel. He didn't attack Mera. He swung the katana downward, sparking against the sarcophagus. Clang! The lock on Izuku's chest restraint shattered. The metal gauntlets hissed as the hydraulic pressure released. I am not here to save you, Midoriya Izuku, Stain growled, bringing his face inches from Izuku's. I am here to free you. What you do with that freedom will decide if you remain a hero, or if you become something necessary. He slashed again. The leg shackles snapped. Izuku fell forward, his knees hitting the metal wall-turned floor. He gasped, clutching his broken arm. The quirk suppressors were still on his wrists, blinking red, but the physical restraints were gone. Get up, Stain commanded. Stain! Mera fired. Bang! The bullet sparked off Stain's shoulder plate. Stain spun, throwing a knife. It pinned Mera's sleeve to the wall of the truck. Mera yelled, dropping the gun. Stain raised his sword to finish the agent. No! Izuku moved. Whatever adrenaline reserves he had left, he burned them. He lunged, not at Stain, but in front of Mera. He slammed his shoulder into Stain's midsection. Without one for all, it was like tackling a brick wall. Stain barely budged, but he stepped back, surprised. Izuku stood there, panting, shielding the HPSC agent who had spent the last 24 hours trying to destroy his life. Don't kill him, Izuku wheezed, holding his broken arm close to his chest. Stain stared at him. The rain hammered against the roof of the truck. He was going to lock you in a hole and throw away the key. He represents the sickness. He's still a person, Izuku said, his legs shaking. And I am still a hero. Stain looked at Izuku. Then at the terrified Mera. Then back at Izuku. Slowly, the hero killer sheathed his sword. A twisted, blood-chilling smile spread across his face. Yes, Stain whispered. Yes. You are. Stain reached into his pouch and threw something at Izuku. Izuku caught it with his good hand. It was a key. A magnetic key for the quirk-suppressing cuffs. The reinforcements are 3 minutes out, Stain said, turning to the open doors. Helicopters. Heroes. The fake ones. Stain looked back over his shoulder. If you stay, you die. If you go with them, you die. The society you protect has rejected you. So, strip away the title. Strip away the school. Show them what a hero looks like when he has nothing left to lose. Stain leaped out into the rain. Wait! Izuku yelled, stumbling to the door. But the hero killer was gone, vanished into the storm and the shadows of the bridge suspension. Izuku stood in the opening. The cold wind lashed at his face. Behind him, Mera was pulling the knife out of his sleeve. The agent looked at Izuku with wide, shocked eyes. He had seen the boy take a blade for his jailer, Midoriya. Mera whispered. Izuku looked at the key in his hand. Then he looked at his wrists. Click! The cuffs hissed and unlocked. They fell to the floor with a heavy thud. The sensation was immediate. One for all flooded back into his body, not a torrent, but a warm, familiar hum. The pain in his arm dulled as the energy supported the bone. The fatigue receded, replaced by the electric crackle of full cowl. He heard the chop of helicopter blades in the distance. Searchlights swept the clouds. He had a choice. He could stay. He could let them take him. He could hope that Mera's testimony would change things. No, the first user said. Mera is just one man. The machine is too big. If you go back in that box, you never come out. Run, the fourth user urged. Run and fight. Izuku turned to Mera. The agent flinched, expecting retribution. Tell them, Izuku said, his voice low but steady. Tell them I didn't run because I'm guilty. Tell them I ran because I have work to do. Midoriya, you can't, Mera stammered. You'll be a fugitive. An S-rank villain. They'll send the top 10 after you. They'll send your friends. I know, Izuku said. The thought sent a spike of agony through his heart that was worse than any broken bone. But someone has to find the truth. He reached into his boot and pulled out the crumpled receipt with the bloody message. He walked over to Mara and pressed the paper into the agent's hand. "Give this to All Might," Izuku commanded. It wasn't a request. It was an order given with the authority of the world's greatest power. Only All Might. Mara looked down at the paper, then up at the boy. He nodded, slowly. Izuku turned back to the storm. Green lightning crackled around his body, illuminating the wreckage. He pulled the hood of his tattered prisoner jumpsuit up. He grabbed a heavy, dark rain poncho from the unconscious guard's kit bag and threw it over his shoulders. He stepped onto the railing of the bridge. Below him, the dark water of the river churned. Above him, the lights of the approaching helicopters blinded the night. "I'm sorry, everyone," he whispered to the wind. He jumped. The underground. 2 days later, the city of Yokohama was different from Tokyo. It was denser, grittier, a port city where things could get lost easily. In the sub-basement of an abandoned shipping warehouse, a figure sat hunched over a flickering kerosene lamp. Izuku Midoriya looked different. The prisoner jumpsuit was gone, replaced by scavenged gear. He wore dark cargo pants, heavy combat boots he had found in a surplus store, and a black hoodie under the guard's rain poncho. His face was gaunt. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in 48 hours. His eyes, usually wide and bright, were shadowed and constantly moving, scanning the perimeter. His broken arm was bound tight with strips of cloth and stabilized with a makeshift brace made of scrap metal. He couldn't heal it properly, but One for All was holding it together. On the wall in front of him, illuminated by the lamp, was a collage of garbage, newspaper clippings, printed photos from internet cafes, maps drawn on cardboard, the Shibuya incident, villain DKU, missing mimicry unconfirmed. Izuku stared at the board. He was muttering, a low, rapid-fire stream of consciousness that filled the empty warehouse. The angle of the footage implies a drone at 30 degrees elevation. HPSC standard issue. But the audio feed had no wind noise. It was filtered. Cleaned. That means post-production. But they aired it live. Impossible unless... He drew a red line with a marker across the cardboard. Unless the footage was pre-rendered. Or the feed was hijacked. He coughed, his chest rattling. The dampness of the hideout was getting to him. "You need to rest, Ninth," Nana's voice was gentle. "You're burning the candle at both ends." "I can't rest," Izuku muttered to the empty room. "If I rest, the trail goes cold. If I rest, they win." He reached for a bottle of water and took a sip. He had become a ghost. In the last 2 days he had moved through the city's underbelly. He had stopped 3 muggings, always from the shadows, always using Black Whip to restrain and silence before vanishing. He couldn't be seen. If Deku was seen saving people, the media would spin it as him terrorizing them. He had to be something else. He looked at the mask lying on the crate next to him. It was his original respirator mask, salvaged from the evidence locker at the police station before the transfer. A risky detour, but necessary. It was damaged, the metal teeth bent into a snarl. He had painted over the bright colors with matte black and dark green spray paint. It looked less like a hero's smile and more like a rabbit's skull. Knock. Knock. Izuku froze. Danger sense didn't trigger. He spun around, charging One for All to 20%, his good arm raised. Standing in the shadows of the warehouse entrance was a figure. Small. Old. Easy, Sonny, the figure rasped. "I ain't here to fight. I'm here because you look like you need a sandwich." A small, elderly man hobbled into the light. He wore a mechanic's jumpsuit covered in grease. It was Jiren, the broker. Izuku's eyes widened. You worked with the League." "Did I?" Jiren lit a cigarette, the cherry glowing in the dark. "I work with whoever pays. Or whoever is interesting. And right now, kid? You're the most interesting thing in Japan. I should take you in," Izuku said, though his stance relaxed slightly. "You could," Jiren shrugged. "But then who would tell you where to find the tech company that manufactured those drones?" Izuku paused. I know people who know people," Jiren grinned, showing gold teeth. "Word on the street is you're innocent. Villains, we know a setup when we see one. The commission is sloppy. They're panicked. Why help me?" Because bad for business is bad for me, Jiren said, kicking a small crate toward Izuku. And a police state run by fearful bureaucrats? That's bad for everyone. Besides, Stain sent word. Said you were off limits? Izuku looked at the crate. Inside were protein bars, bottled water, and a burner phone. The coordinates for the drone manufacturer are in the phone, Jiren said, turning to leave. Watch your back, Deku. The heroes are organizing a hunting party. And it ain't the B-listers. Who? Izuku asked. Jiren stopped at the door. He looked back, pity in his eyes. Endeavor. Hawks. And a bunch of kids from UA who look really pissed off. Jiren vanished into the night. Izuku stood alone in the warehouse. He picked up the phone. The hunt was on. His friends were coming for him. He picked up the mask, the dark, snarling rabbit face, and strapped it on. The respirator hissed as it sealed. Let them come, he whispered, his voice distorted by the mask. He turned back to the investigation board. He wasn't the prey. He was the hunter. UA High School, Alliance dorms. The same night, the mood in the dorms had shifted from despair to a cold, hard resolve. Aizawa stood in the center of the common room. His leg was bothering him, but he stood tall. We have received intel, Aizawa said, his voice gravelly. Midoriya escaped custody during a villain ambush on his transport. Gasps rippled through the room. Is he okay? Uraraka asked, gripping her chest. He is listed as a fugitive, Aizawa continued. The HPSC has authorized the use of force to bring him in. They are calling him armed and extremely dangerous. Bullcrap, Bakugo growled from the couch. Language, Ida said automatically, though his heart wasn't in it. The commission wants to deploy a task force, Aizawa said, looking at his students. They wanted to exclude UA. They think you are compromised. We are compromised, Kirishima shouted. He's our friend. Exactly, Aizawa said. A small, rare smile touched his lips. Which is why I convinced them that you are the only ones who can bring him in safely. The room went silent. If the pros find him, Aizawa said darkly, they might shoot first. If the police find him, they might use lethal force. But if we find him, we bring him home, Todoroki finished. We have a lead, Aizawa said. Sightings in Yokohama. A vigilante matching his description stopping crimes in the Port District. Bakugo stood up. He cracked his knuckles. Explosions popping softly. I'm going to find that nerd, Bakugo said, his eyes burning with intensity. And I'm going to blast him into next week for running away without asking for help. We're all going, Uraraka said, standing up. Her face was set in stone. We're going to save him from himself. Suit up, Aizawa ordered. We leave in 1 hour. As the class scrambled to get their gear, Bakugo lingered for a moment. He looked at the window, at the rain falling outside. He remembered the note All Might had shown them earlier. The crumpled receipt Mera had delivered. Not you. Not them. Find the truth. Stupid Deku, Bakugo whispered. You think you can shoulder the whole world alone? Not while I'm breathing. He turned and marched toward the locker rooms. The retrieval arc had begun. The coastal highway, crash site, postscript. Detective Tsukachi stood in the rain, looking at the wreckage of the transport truck. He walked over to where the door had been sheared off. He ran his hand along the metal. Clean cut, he muttered. Stain. He looked at the ground. There were footprints. Muddy, chaotic. And then, a set of footprints leading to the edge of the bridge. Tsukachi looked over the edge. It was 100-foot drop to the river. Sir? An officer asked, approaching him. Mera's statement is being processed. He claims Midoriya saved his life. I believe it, Tsukachi sighed. He adjusted his trench coat. He pulled out his phone and dialed a private number. All Might? Is he? All Might's voice was frail on the other end. He's gone, Tashinori. He ran. A pause. Good, All Might said, his voice surprisingly strong. If he is running, he is fighting. Tsukachi. I need you to look into the HPSC files. Deep. Something smells rotten. I'm already on it, Tsukachi said, watching the police lights reflect off the wet pavement. The hunt is on, my friend. Let's hope the boy finds the answers before the wolves find him. Tsukachi hung up. He looked at the empty sarcophagus unit lying in the road. Run, Midoriya, Scotchy whispered. Run like hell. The Yokohama slums didn't sleep, they festered. It was a district the Hero Society liked to pretend didn't exist, a labyrinth of rusted shipping containers, unlicensed quirk clinics, and neon-drenched alleyways where the law was merely a suggestion. Here, the rain didn't wash away the grime. It just made the oil slicks on the pavement shimmer with a psychedelic, toxic sheen. 2 weeks. It had been 14 days since the Shibuya collapse. 14 days since Izuku Midoriya had died in the eyes of the public, replaced by the monster they called the Fallen. But in the whispers of the Yokohama underground, a new name was circulating. A ghost story told by drug runners and quirk boost traffickers. The Green Rabbit. Izuku crouched on top of a rusted HVAC unit 3 stories up. The metal was cold against his palms, seeping through his torn gloves. He adjusted the respirator mask. It was battered, the black paint chipped to reveal the original green beneath, and the filtration cartridges were clogged, making his breathing sound like a coarse, mechanical rasp. HHHQ. HHHQ. He was hungry. A gnawing, acidic emptiness in his stomach that had become his constant companion. He hadn't eaten a hot meal since the dorms. He lived on energy jelly pouches stolen from convenience store dumpsters and bottled water bought with loose change found in vending machines. Focus, the fourth user's voice echoed in his mind. Danger sense is quiet. But they're here. Below him, in the narrow alleyway, a transaction was taking place. 3 men in leather jackets were handing a heavy, lead-lined briefcase to a massive mutant-type villain with skin like concrete. Pure trigger, one of the jackets whispered. Straight from the Detonarat stockpile. This stuff will make a D-rank quirk hit like an A-rank. Good, the concrete villain grunted. With the heroes distracted hunting that Deku kid, it's a buyer's market. Izuku's eyes narrowed behind the yellow lenses of his mask. Detonarat. The company linked to Redistro. If anyone had the technology to fake a broadcast or create a shapeshifter, it was the remnants of the Meta Liberation Army. He didn't move like a hero anymore. He didn't announce his presence. He activated smokescreen. A thick, purple fog rolled off his body, heavy and unnatural. It spilled over the edge of the roof, cascading down into the alleyway like a waterfall of ink. What the hell? The concrete villain looked up. Gas leak? No, one of the smugglers hissed, pulling a gun. It's him. Izuku dropped. He didn't use a smash. He used Black Whip. 6 tendrils, black as the night and glowing with teal energy, shot out of the smoke. They didn't strike, they entangled. 2 tendrils wrapped around the gunmen's ankles, yanking them upward. They screamed as they were hoisted 20 feet into the air, dangling upside down. The concrete villain roared, swinging a massive fist blindly into the smoke. Show yourself, you rat! Izuku landed silently behind him. 1 for all, 15%. He couldn't use more. His left arm was still broken, the bone knitting slowly, held together by a makeshift brace of scrap metal and duct tape. Even the recoil of a 20% impact would shatter it again. He had to be precise. Float, Izuku whispered. He pushed off the ground, hovering just out of reach of the villain's swing. He spun in the air, driving his iron-soled boot into the villain's pressure point at the base of the neck. Thwack! It was a surgical strike. The massive villain's eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the wet pavement like a demolished building. The alley went silent, save for the whimpering of the 2 men hanging from the Black Whip. Izuku landed on the briefcase. He looked up at the suspended criminals. Through the smoke and the rain, with his glowing eyes and tattered cape, he looked like a nightmare. Talk, Izuku said. His voice was distorted by the mask, sounding metallic and hollow. We don't know anything. One of the smugglers stammered. Please. We're just couriers. Izuku tightened the Black Whip. Not enough to break bones, but enough to terrify. The Shibuya incident, Izuku rasped. The technology used to frame Deku. It came from Detonarat. Where is the render farm? Where are the servers? I don't know. I swear. You're selling their drugs, Izuku said, stepping closer. You know where the supply comes from. The thug was shaking. There's a defunct tech hub. In Kamino. An old server farm. They use it for the crypto mining front. That's all I know. Please don't drop me, Kamino. The place where All Might fell. The irony tasted like ash in Izuku's mouth. If you're lying, Izuku whispered, I'll find you. He lowered them gently to the ground, binding them tightly with capture tape he'd scavenged. He took the briefcase of Trigger and crushed the locking mechanism, destroying the contents with a controlled burst of energy. Sirens wailed in the distance. Police. Izuku looked at his hand. It was shaking. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. Time to go, Ninth, the first user said gently. You're shivering. Izuku pulled his hood up and shot a black whip line to the rooftops. He swung away into the night, leaving the criminals tied up for the police, a gift from the public enemy. The hideout, Yokohama Subway Line 4, 3 a.m. The abandoned subway station smelled of mold, rust, and old electricity. It had been sealed off years ago due to structural instability, making it the perfect hole for a ghost to hide in. Izuku sat on the floor of a derailed subway car. The windows were smashed, and graffiti covered the walls. A small, battery-operated lantern provided a pool of weak yellow light. He hissed in pain as he adjusted the brace on his left arm. The skin underneath was bruised and angry. It's not healing right, he muttered to himself, unwrapping a bandage that had seen better days. You're not giving it time, the second user's voice was stern. You're out every night. You're using Black Whip constantly. The strain on your skeletal structure is cumulative. I don't have time, Izuku shot back, tearing open a packet of nutritional jelly with his teeth. He squeezed the contents into his mouth, barely tasting the artificial grape flavor. It was just fuel. He stood up and walked to the wall of the subway car. It was covered in papers. Maps of Tokyo and Yokohama. Printouts of the HPSC hierarchy. Photos of the villain mimicry, blurry, inconclusive. And right in the center, a photo of himself, Deku, with a red target drawn over his face. He picked up a marker. He drew a circle around Kamino Ward, Tech Hub. Detonator at front, he noted. If they rendered the fake footage, the raw data has to be there. The timestamps. The edit logs. He stepped back, swaying slightly. He caught his reflection in the dark glass of the subway door. He looked terrible. His hair was matted with grease and dust. His eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. His costume, once a symbol of hope, was now a patchwork of grime, ripped fabric, and tactical modifications. The ears of his cowl were torn, drooping like a broken rabbit. You look like a villain, he thought. Appearances deceive, Yoichi the First said. You are more hero now than you ever were in a classroom. But Ninth, you are lonely. Izuku sat back down, pulling his knees to his chest. He touched the burner phone Jiren had given him. He wanted to call them. He wanted to hear Ochako's voice. He wanted to hear Ida scold him. He wanted to hear Bakugo yell. But he couldn't. The HPSC would be monitoring every frequency. One call would bring a strike team to his door. I'm not lonely, Izuku lied to the ghosts in his head. I have a mission. He curled up on the hard plastic seat of the subway car, clutching the burner phone like a lifeline, and fell into a fitful, nightmare-filled sleep. UA High School, Class 1A dorms. The next morning, the silence in the Heights Alliance dorms was heavy enough to choke on. It was Saturday. Usually, the common room would be bustling. Today, it felt like a war room. The TV was on, low volume. A news anchor was interviewing a spokesperson from the HPSC. The fugitive known as Deku is still at large. Reports from Yokohama suggest he has engaged in vigilantism, brutally assaulting 3 citizens last night. The commission advises all civilians to stay indoors after dark. Brutally assaulting? The voice cut through the room like a whip crack. Katsuki Bakugo stood by the kitchen island, gripping a knife he was using to chop vegetables. He wasn't cooking, he was obliterating a carrot. They were drug smugglers. Bakugo shouted, pointing the knife at the TV. I saw the police report on the scanner. They were carrying Trigger. He tied them up and left them for the cops. Since when is catching drug dealers brutal assault? Tenya Ida sat at the dining table, his glasses reflecting the morning light. He had a stack of papers in front of him, legal briefs, case files, HPSC mandates. He looked 10 years older than he was. The law is specific, Bakugo, Ida said, his voice weary. Without a license, any quirk used against civilians, even criminals, is considered assault. Technically, the news isn't lying. Technically? Bakugo slammed the knife down. The carrot pieces went flying. Technically, our best friend is being hunted like a rabid animal for a crime he didn't commit, and you're quoting the rulebook? I am trying to find a legal precedent to help him. Ida snapped, standing up. Do you think I like this? Do you think I want to sit here while Midoriya is out there? But if we act rashly, we play into their hands. We get expelled. Or arrested. Then who helps him? Stop it! Both of you. Ochako Uraraka stood in the center of the room. She was holding a tray of tea, but her hands were shaking so hard the cups were rattling. Fighting each other won't bring him back, she said, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. This is exactly what they want. They want us divided. She set the tray down and wiped her eyes aggressively. Ida is right. We need a plan. But Bakugo is right, too. We can't just sit here reading papers. He's hurt. I know he is. Shoto Todoroki walked in from the elevator. He was wearing his hero costume, minus the tactical belt. Aizawa-sensei is calling a briefing in 10 minutes, Todoroki said calmly. But I overheard Mike talking. The HPSC has located a high-probability hideout in Yokohama. They're mobilizing a strike team. The room froze. A strike team? Kirishima asked, hardening his arms instinctively. Like police? No, Todoroki shook his head. Top heroes. Endeavor. Hawks. Kamui Woods. And they requested student support for identification and negotiation. They want us to hunt him, Bakugo realized. His face twisted into a snarl that was terrifying to behold. They want to use us as bait. What do we do? Momo Yaoyorozu asked, her hand going to her chest. Bakugo walked over to the table and grabbed a piece of toast. He took a bite, his eyes burning with a cold, calculating fire. We go, Bakugo said. We suit up. We join their stupid task force. Bakugo. Ida warned. And the second we find him, Bakugo continued, looking Ida dead in the eye, we don't arrest him. We cover his escape. Or we help him finish whatever he's doing. That's treason, Ida whispered. That's aiding and abetting a fugitive, Bakugo smirked. It was a sharp, dangerous expression. You want to be a hero, Four Eyes? Or do you want to be a cop? Heroes save people. Even when society says they shouldn't. Ida stared at him. He looked at Uraraka, who nodded fiercely. He looked at Todoroki, who was already putting on his gauntlets. Ida closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. He picked up his glasses and cleaned them. If we are to engage in treason, Ida said, placing his glasses back on his face, we should ensure we are efficient about it. I will map out the evacuation routes. A ripple of energy went through the class. It wasn't happiness. It was resolve. Let's go get our boy, Kirishima said, slamming his fists together. The hunt begins. Yokohama, Red Brick Warehouse District, 8 p.m. The rain had stopped, leaving the city enveloped in a thick, cold mist. A massive command truck sat parked near the harbor. Inside, Endeavor stared at a bank of monitors. Heat signatures in the lower subway tunnels are inconclusive, a technician said. But we have acoustic data. Footsteps. Erratic. Matches the target's gait. He's limping, Hawks said from the corner. The wing hero was leaning against the wall, his face uncharacteristically serious. He was twirling a feather between his fingers. Poor kid. He's running on fumes. He is a suspect in a mass casualty event, the HPSC commander barked. Save your pity, Hawks. Endeavor, are the students in position? Endeavor looked out the window to where Class 1A was gathered. They looked grim. Professional. They are ready, Endeavor grunted. But I warn you again. If you order your men to open fire on a child, I will burn this truck to ashes. The commander gulped. Non-lethal force is authorized. Unless the target engages with lethal intent, he won't, Hawks murmured. It's Deku, the subway station. Izuku was packing his meager belongings. Danger sense was starting to throb. A low, rhythmic headache. It wasn't the sharp stab of malice. It was the dull pressure of intent. They're coming, he whispered. He shoved the investigation notes into his waterproof bag. He grabbed the last protein bar. He strapped the brace tighter on his arm. He looked at the tunnel leading north, toward Kamino. I just need one more day, he pleaded with the universe. Just let me get to the servers. Boom! A concussion blast shook the station. The ceiling dusted him with debris. Midoriya Izuku! The voice was amplified. It echoed down the tunnels. It was a voice he had admired his whole life. This is the pro-hero endeavor. The exits are sealed. Surrender peacefully, and you will receive medical attention. Izuku froze. Endeavor. The number one hero. And not just him, the third user warned. I can feel vibrations. Many people. Fast. Agile. Izuku looked toward the south tunnel. He saw shadows moving in the mist. Familiar silhouettes. The glint of engines on calves. The spark of explosions. His friends. They were here. Panic clawed at his throat. He couldn't fight them. If he fought them, he proved the HPSC right. If he hurt them, he couldn't bear it, but he couldn't surrender. Not yet. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered. He turned and ran. Not toward the exits, but deeper into the darkness, toward the maintenance shafts that led to the sewers. He's moving! Bakugo's voice roared from the tunnel behind him. DKU, you damn nerd, stop running! Izuku didn't stop. He activated full cowl, 30%. Green lightning illuminated the tunnel as he sprinted, his boots splashing through the stagnant water. Ice wall, crack. A massive glacier erupted in front of him, blocking the tunnel. Todoroki. Izuku didn't slow down. Smash! He punched the ice with his good arm. The glacier shattered into a million diamonds. He burst through the shards, shivering as the cold bit into his skin. Please! Uraraka's voice echoed. Deku! Just talk to us. He bit his lip so hard it bled. Don't listen. Don't listen. If you stop, you lose. He saw a service ladder leading up to a storm drain. He jumped, grabbing the rungs with black whip. As he hauled himself up, a streak of red feather shot past his ear, embedding itself in the concrete. Too slow, kid! Hawks! Izuku scrambled up the ladder, bursting out into the alleyway above. He was surrounded. On the rooftops, Eraserhead, Kamui Woods, and the sniper teams. Blocking the street ends, Ida, Kirishima, Mina. Hovering above, Hawks and Nijire Hado. He was trapped in a cul-de-sac of brick and despair. Izuku stood in the center of the street, panting. He looked like a cornered animal. His clothes were rags. His mask was cracked. He held his broken arm against his chest. The HPSC spotlights hit him, blindingly bright. Target acquired, the radio squawked. Class 1A stepped forward. They didn't look like they were attacking. They looked heartbroken. Midoriya Aizawa walked out from the shadows, his hands raised, showing he wasn't activating his quirk yet. Look at you. You're falling apart. I didn't do it, Sensei, Izuku croaked. The voice modulator in his mask made him sound like a robot, stripping the emotion from his plea. We know! Uraraka shouted, stepping past Aizawa. We know you didn't. That's why we're here. Let us help you. You can't help me, Izuku said, backing away until his back hit a brick wall. The system, it's rigged. They have proof that isn't proof. If I come back, they bury me. I have to find the source. Then let us help you find it. Todoroki yelled. No! Izuku screamed. The raw power of his voice cracked the modulator. If you help me, you become criminals too. UA gets shut down. I won't. I won't drag you down with me, you idiot! Bakugo launched himself from the roof, landing with a heavy boom between Izuku and the heroes. Bakugo turned his back on Izuku. He faced the police and the pros. Bakugo? Izuku whispered. Shut up, nerd, Bakugo growled. He raised his gauntlets toward Endeavor. You wanna catch him? You gotta go through me. Bakugo, stand down. Endeavor shouted, his flames flaring. That is a direct order. I don't take orders from people who are blind. Bakugo yelled. He looked back at Izuku over his shoulder. His eyes were fierce, wild. Go, Bakugo whispered. What? I'm gonna make a hole, Bakugo said, sparks flying from his palms. Ida and Icy Hot know the play. When the smoke clears, you get your ass to Kamino. You find that proof. And you shove it down their throats. Kaken. Tears welled up in Izuku's eyes behind the mask. Go! Bakugo slammed his hands together. Stun grenade, max output. A blinding flash of white light engulfed the street. It was brighter than the sun. The audio receptors of the drones whined and died. The pros flinched, shielding their eyes. Now! Todoroki's voice. A wave of ice surged sideways, not at Izuku, but blocking the line of sight from the snipers. Ida zoomed past Izuku, whispering as he went, Maintenance hatch, Sector 4. It's unlocked. Run, Midoriya! Izuku didn't hesitate. He trusted them. He wrapped Black Whip around a drain pipe and launched himself into the blinding white void. Suspect is fleeing. The commander screamed over the comms. Engage! Engage! But in the chaos of the flash bang and the ice wall, the green rabbit was gone. He vanished into the night, carrying the weight of his friend's treason on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for them. As he sprinted across the rooftops, leaving the shouting and the sirens behind, Izuku ripped the broken mask off his face. He let the cold wind dry his tears. Kamino, he said, his eyes glowing with a terrifying resolve. I'm coming.